What is up, everyone? Welcome to Outdoor Cats. Today is Thursday, January 16th, and this has been a remarkably annoying week. Chris, how annoying has this week been for you?
This week has been extremely annoying, and it's not my job to write about it in basically real time. So I can only imagine how annoying it's been for you. But yeah, I've been in a pissy mood all day, and I realized at some point that it was pretty much entirely because of what we're about to talk about.
Yes.
And how stupid and shitty people are being, and that it really just was making me mad, and I had to just kind of close everything down and like forget about it and lay down in my bed for 30 minutes. And then I got a Cuban from New England roast beef, and I felt a fair bit better.
Wow. I've never had the Cuban there, but I love that place.
Yeah, the Cuban is I would say is an underrated option at NERB. If you are looking for a fully authentic Cuban, it's not. But if you're looking for something very much like a Cuban that tastes really good, it is that. So I recommend it. That's my hot food tip for the day.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. So what we have to go through today, which has been, I woke up in the worst mood today as well. I was like to the point where I had to like apologize to my girlfriend, being like, I can't even explain to you really why I'm so down, because this has just been so remarkably shitty and stupid, even by Worcester standards.
Yeah.
All of it swirling around Candy Mero-Carlson, who really jumped the shitty and stupid shark this week. But I guess we should start from the beginning here. Tuesday night city council meeting. Joe Petty. It's important to start the story with Joe Petty. Joe Petty has two orders on admonishing two of our progressive city councilors for behavior that he doesn't personally like, that he finds offensive.
Mm-hmm.
One is for in-meeting decorum, targeting Christian King, who raised his voice a couple of weeks ago, which is a huge
raised his voice at the mayor, who was breaking a council rule and making comment from the chair, which is expressly prohibited.
Yes, yeah, but it's now it's cause for conversation about decorum. And then another, importantly, the second one of Joe's two petty orders was targeting Thu Nguyen, talking about attending meetings via Zoom. If you haven't heard this line of criticism for Thu, consider yourself lucky, because this is some of the chatter you're most likely to hear on the crankiest corners of Worcester internet, that Thu never shows up to meetings, and you see here the mayor indulging in that line of inquiry, right? Really trying to make a thing of it, ostensibly as punishment for the Gaza demonstration, which Thu was involved in.
Yes.
Actually trying to use the city council to do actual politics. That is very against the rules in Worcester. As we went over with Ali extensively in the last episode. But so during that conversation, Two makes it known, didn't say a counselor's name, but makes it known then that, a counselor referred to who is non-binary, actually the first non-binary elected official in the state, as it,
Yes.
which is the important thing. And secondarily, that other counselors have been repeatedly misgendering them. So that, Two says that they get backed up by Christian and Attell, and then everyone else just sort of ignores it on Tuesday night, and they go on to talk for a clean 45 minutes about the city's sort of crony patronage system for deciding which streets get repaved. District councilors get to sort of pick and choose the order of what streets get fresh pavement and on their sidewalks, which is like an obvious recipe for currying favor with key constituents and vote trading and stuff like that. So,
yep. A time-honored Worcester tradition of cronyism and political backwaterness.
Right. And Candy Mero-Carlson was the maddest of anybody about some perceived inscrutable changes to that system that likely had her making promises to some constituents that the city wasn't fulfilling or something like that. Who knows? Mm-hmm. She got really, really mad about that.
Well, if we had the opportunity to choose and everything's so great, why the heck are we saying we got 4 years worth of sidewalks that he's willing to do?
So they completely ignore to saying that a counselor did something pretty monstrous. Was running around City Hall calling to it.
By all accounts, and I'm going to be very careful with what I say here, but much like you, Bill, I suspect I have ears all over the city. I know a lot of people, and people tell me things. And I was told that comment was not the first time. And I was told that comment was made in front of other people, including other city councilors. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Right. Yeah. I just to cover bases, I put in a record request for emails and texts. But it seems like the chirping about calling to it was something that was happening in basically just in out loud conversations around City Hall. And the amount of people that have sort of soft confirmed it, but aren't willing to stick their necks out and like actually confirm it because, City Hall is a punitive place to work and no one's going to risk their job over this. But it's solid, it's solid. And it's also completely believable.
I don't make accusations like this lightly, and I suspect you don't either, Bill.
Right. Yeah. It happened. I feel comfortable saying that. But anyway, so Tuesday night, we don't know who Two is talking about. Wednesday morning, we learn. Two puts up a statement on Wednesday morning. And I'll just read from it here. It is unfortunate as we transition under a Trump administration and see an exponential increase of fear experienced by the LGBTQ plus community that I, as a city councilor at large of Worcester, had to file a complaint with our Executive Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion about my experience in the past 3 years of dealing with transphobia and a discriminatory and toxic council culture, being misgendered by Mayor Petty and Councilor at Large Kate Toomey publicly on the council floor, and then recently learning that District 2 Councilor Mero-Carlson has been referring to me as it multiple times.
Mm.
This announcement comes with the announcement of a month long hiatus from council business and a formal request for the city's chief equity officer to open an immediate investigation and create an action plan to address the matter. All of that, I think, is sensible. Why would we have a chief diversity officer if not to investigate stuff like this?
Yeah. Why would we have had 3 of them in 4 years if not to investigate stuff like this?
Maybe we had 3 and 4 years because they tried to investigate stuff like this.
Yeah,
and
you might be onto something.
They weren't allowed to. So too, actually, before we move on to Candy's response, which is, I think, where we should spend the most of the time, because it is shockingly revealing of a certain worldview.
Bananas.
Two includes a certain a factoid from the Trevor Project that is very germane to this conversation, and also germane to the way that the community has received this news, right? So two shares at the Trevor Project reported an overall volume increase of nearly 700% on November 6th after Trump's election compared to the weeks prior of physical threats, violence, and hate directed at LGBTQ plus folks across the country. And, you know, the right wing's sort of war on trans people is well documented, well known, and only going to get worse as they come into power and start executing on their vision for how to use that power. So these are real concerns, not to be taken lightly.
Yeah. On that note, you know, I don't know what people's level of experience with this is, but I just want to say that is not hyperbolic. I've been talking to trans friends and trans allies and folks that I know, and people are really concerned about physical violence, about all of these sorts of things. They're also concerned because it seems very likely that a ban on any federal funding for basically any healthcare for trans people is going to be a real thing. So when people are talking about this, I want you to know that trans people are legitimately concerned that they might die, that they might actually die. I have seen people sharing resources on DIY hormone therapy. Like, it is bleak.
Yeah. It's bleak, and it's only going to get more bleak. Not something that should be immediately written off. It's something to take very seriously. Kate Toomey is the first to respond, and Kate Toomey, to her credit,
always a good sign.
To her credit, like, apologizes for the misgendering, which is like a perfectly sane, reasonable, normal, and just non-taxing thing to do. Sorry that I misgendered you. I mean, I have done it. I've apologized. It's like, it's not the end of the world to accidentally misgender someone if you're just a normal human being about it. Calling somebody it is like a totally different thing, because that's like you're intentionally dehumanizing and belittling a person because they don't identify as strictly male or strictly female.
In intent, it is not a misgendering, I would argue, and I have argued. It is a slur. It is someone calling their colleague a slur.
Right. It's not like letting a he or a she slip by accident in speech, which is which is easy to do, regrettable as it is. And as we move our way through the timeline here, I think it's important to keep in mind how much effort has been made to conflate the two things in the sort of the right wing discourse, that the whole thing is over misgendering, when you're right, Chris, is the perfect way to put it. The use of it here by Candy Mero-Carlson is like a slur. It's not a whoopsies. It's not a goof 'em up. It's not a mistake. That's something that you say intentionally to intentionally belittle and dehumanize somebody. So we have Kate Toomey first, apologizing. Second statement we have released is from the woman herself, District 2 City Councilor Candy Mero-Carlson. And the headline is, I love this. I just want to say, first of all, that the new modus operandi of city council beefs is that everyone puts out their own little statement and like they make the same city council staff liaison person put them out. So like today was just such an annoying day of just receiving like statement from, you know, every single counselor getting sent out by the same one or two people. And this one, curiously, I didn't get sent to me, so I must have been taken off the Mero-Carlson list at some point. Thank God. But
seems like a trend with her. She doesn't like to get feedback from people that she doesn't like to get feedback from. Right.
Have tried to call her a few times. She never picked up. But the headline of this response press release thing reads that Mero-Carlson addresses claims by at-large city councilor Thu Nguyen. We're going to go through this paragraph at a time. The first paragraph is cuckoo bananas. Mero-Carlson says, throughout my career as an activist, put a pin in that, as an activist, a member of the Democratic State Committee, a former chair of the Worcester Democratic City Committee, and a dedicated public servant, I have worked tirelessly to champion equal rights and advanced LGBTQ plus policies. My lifelong commitment has been to foster a community where every resident feels safe, valued, and included, not just in Worcester, but across the Commonwealth and our nation. I mean, you couldn't write a more stock Democrat thing than that.
I've been an activist in Worcester for a long time. Candy Mero-Carlson, activist, citation needed. She was on the Democratic State Committee. I'm not sure why it's germane. She was the chair of the Democratic City Committee, which was a position she used to help her run for office in a huge conflict of interest, but I'm not sure why it's germane. Anyway, sorry, continue.
My lifelong commitment has been to foster a community where every resident feels safe, valued, and included. But like, I don't know.
Really though?
Is that true when you're going around and calling a non-binary city councilor that you don't personally like it to anybody who will seemingly fucking listen to you on the third floor of City Hall?
Insert Tim Robinson. You sure about that?
You sure about that? You sure about that's why?
Sure about that? That's why?
Moving on to paragraph 2, which is the best paragraph of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph statement, starts off with, while I do not recall making the statements in question, I acknowledge that it was a challenging and emotional week where difficult conversations took place. Now, that phrase, I acknowledge that it was a difficult week, is hilarious because we just read Thu's statement. And did you hear anything in that about a particular week in which Thu alleged that Candy was calling them it? I didn't see.
I didn't either. But yeah, it's really interesting. She is very sure about a particular week that she does not recall calling someone it.
Yes, she definitely doesn't recall, but seems to recall the week in which she doesn't recall.
Yeah.
Which I think we're pretty safely able to confirm at this point is the week of the Gaza ceasefire demonstration round 2. But it doesn't matter. Any time that anybody has done what Mero-Carlson did here, it's bad. And just giving up the entire ghost there right away by identifying the specific week when nobody else did.
Yep.
How do you say I did it more potently than that? I mean, it also amounts to being like, while I don't recall making those statements, I wouldn't put it past myself to do that either. So
yeah, it is really saying, to be completely clear, I don't recall doing it, but if I did it, it's because sometimes when I have bad weeks, I'm a bigot.
Right. Yeah. Everyone has a bad week, right? So Mero-Carlson acknowledges that it was a quote, challenging and emotional week where difficult conversations took place. I don't think that you had any conversation, let alone difficult ones, but certainly not on the council floor also, by the way.
Nope. We were there.
Second sentence. These claims, it's just one claim, but she keeps using plural, which is interesting, right? These claims, however, misrepresent my character, my record, and the values I have consistently upheld. But like one sentence ago, you're basically saying that you said it. And if you said it, it was because it was a tough week. And I might not remember saying it, but like maybe I said it, and it was just a tough week.
Yeah. Also, her evidence for her like long-standing commitment to the LGBTQ community, again, just to quickly recap, is I was an activist. Okay. I was the chair of the Democratic State Committee. I'm sorry, I was on the Democratic State Committee and the Democratic City Committee.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
That's that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't. Those aren't bona fides for being an ally in any way. As we'll get to as we move through this week from hell. And then third sentence of this second paragraph is, it is deeply troubling that Councillor Nguyen has chosen to distort the narrative and weaponize these accusations for political purposes, rather than engaging in constructive dialogue that serves the best interests of Worcester's residents. What is she doing here except the same, the exact accusation that she's leveling onto?
Yeah.
She is distorting the narrative. She is
and
weaponizing it. And she is most certainly not engaging in constructive dialogue. The constructive dialogue here to be engaged in would have been to, I don't know, say sorry. Like, yeah, I said that, and it sucks that I got caught doing it. But I am a reasonable person and understand that I'm in the wrong here, so I'm going to apologize. That would have been,
and I'll do better.
Right. That would have been constructive dialogue. Two's not a dummy. Two had no reason to expect there to be constructive dialogue. There was no reason to approach Katie Mero-Carlson because we knew all along that this is how she would be reacting. She would react in exactly this way, making herself the victim of an unfair political attack, a witch hunt,
Yes. Except I want to say something quickly, which is that if Thu had taken that approach, we wouldn't have receipts, which we do now.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So, I mean, what Thu did going public with that was a brave thing to do, and has really pulled a certain mask off of this community that I think Candy Mero-Carlson really ushered into being with this statement. That there is just so much directionless or previously directionless anger getting pointed Thu's way. It's just like the diffuse blob of townie grievances has coalesced around this one non-binary person of color that basically just went, can you please not call me it? Right. And just the amount of just bigotry and hatred that has descended onto for having done that is absolutely insane. Candy Mero-Carlson is not on an island here. Joe Petty's statement, which we're going to get to after this, is like almost identical. They are really playing to a base that like kind of de facto wants to deny someone like Thu their humanity.
And they're doing it in, as I think we'll discuss, in a really weird distraction kind of way around Thu's attendance as a city councilor, so that they can basically denigrate this person further without calling them it again in a public statement. Right.
Yeah. They are they're preaching to a choir of people that are prone to hate people like Thu. They've been pumped up their entire life to hate people like Thu. The third paragraph of the statement going on, and this is where Candy gets really, frankly, extremely bitchy. It's no secret that Councillor Nguyen and I approach public service differently. This year, Councillor Nguyen has the lowest attendance record of any city councillor, a striking contrast to my near-perfect attendance and presence at meetings and events across the city nearly every night of the week. It's like, I'm going to stop there because if attendance is all you have, then you're going to run with it. But it is like very telling that they're not talking about policy here. They're not talking about record, because what are they going to say? They're going to say, unlike Thu, I voted basically in support of a genocide. Unlike Thu, I voted that crisis pregnancy centers should go on tricking people into ill-advised medical situations. It's they have no like moral position. So what they're left with is the fact that Thu attends meetings on Zoom. And Thu is very clear about the fact that they attend meetings on Zoom because they don't feel safe in City Hall. And after seeing the way that this week has played out, who could fucking blame them, right?
Yeah.
How could you possibly feel safe in City Hall if this is the response that you're getting from your colleagues in City Hall? And it gets even worse. I mean, after Candy like pats herself on the back for showing up, because she doesn't have a fucking real job.
Correct. That's a theme here with who shows up, with who has the most perfect attendance records.
Yeah, it's very easy as a quasi-retiree to have a perfect attendance record. But anyway, second sentence of graph 3 here, my focus has always been on showing up for our community, listening to constituents, and delivering results. Unfortunately, Councillor Nguyen's approach seems more centered on sowing chaos and division rather than collaboration or addressing the real needs of the city. This is the line that fucking sent me over. This is where she really jumps the shark, because when she's saying this, she is not talking just to Two. She is talking to me. She's talking to you, Chris. She's talking to Attell. She's talking to Christian. She's talking to the multi-faith coalition. She's talking to Project Priceless. She's talking to everyone who is not in her little coterie of longtime political insiders that is trying to effectuate real change in the city and is coming up time and time again against the storm wall that she and her ilk deliberately put in their way. She is calling participation in our democracy, if it is not her little camp, that is sowing chaos and division, because she doesn't like personally what's going on. That is so insulting. And so to back it up, I get fired up about this. I have my piece half written, and I spend a long time on this part. To back it up, she says that she has always been showing up for our community, listening to constituents, and delivering results. And I think it's important to talk about the realpolitik of what the results are, what the community is, and how she's showing up, right?
Candy is my district counselor. She is my district representative in city council. I stopped a long time ago because it was a waste of my time. But when Candy became my district representative in city council, I did try to reach out to her on several occasions about items that were germane on the agenda that I wanted to ask her to approach in one way or another, or other like constituent services things. I never received a response from Candy, not one time. So I think that your point about what council is supposed to be doing in Candy's eyes and who her constituency is one that is very well made. And I think that it's very clear to me that if what you are asking the council to do is not do patronage on street paving, or to water down a rental registry, or oppose ADUs, and to do things that are important to you that are not those things, then you are sowing division.
Yeah, it's not division because you're the one opposed to the new ideas coming in. Proposing the new ideas is division. Listen, in Candy's interpretation of constituency, there's three main people. There's the cranks, who are, like the petty bourgeois, like landlords of triple deckers. There's police officers, and then there's the developer community. This is very obvious when you look at her campaign donations. And it's all manifest in one of her closest friends and advisors, Anthony Petroni, who's the vice president of one of the police unions in Worcester, the Patrolmen's Union, I think. I'm not sure. But
yeah, I think that's right.
He's sort of like a longtime political operative on the right flank of the Democratic Party. He is high up in the police union and actually was just at city council demanding that the city council ask the DOJ to dox the victims that accuse police officers of sexual misconduct. And he's also a petty real estate speculator, owns property all over the east side, triple deckers. He's a classic slumlord. So like, this is who has historically really been the only constituency in City Hall, is a guy like Anthony Petroni. And then the people that compose like the nebulous public-private partnership of our fake downtown. So like people like Tim Murray, Craig Blaise of the Worcester Business Development Corporation, and all of like Joe Worley and all of those sort of like deeply entrenched politicos.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, does anyone want to guess how many of those people live in District 2 like I do? How many of them are actually her literal constituents?
Right. Yeah.
Not many.
No. Yeah. I mean, that's Candy. If you're listening to this, like if you just resign,
God, I hope you are.
If you just resign, like you don't have to live in District 2 anymore. You can live anywhere. You know, you can even live in Holden where you really want to be. Yeah. So Candy's overture here to like, I am the one who sticks up for my community, could be for a couple of reasons. She's either denying the fact that Two has a community that Two sticks up for, and organizes, and like that's literally the reason why Two got elected. You can't get elected if you don't do that, or just it is invisible to her because of the racial and class makeup of it. So which is it? Are you trying not to see it, or you just can't see it? Either way, it's not good. It's not great, Candy.
No, it's not. And again, not to be all Robert's rules about this, because I don't really care about this stuff, but it is the perspective from which they are trying to argue this. Two is a at-large counselor. So if we want to be technical about it, Two's constituency is the entire city, and Candy's is one of 5 districts of the city. So just to say that.
Right. Two brought their constituency out for the Gaza ceasefire demonstration. And it was one of the most effective mobilizations of like real human beings who give a shit in Worcester that I've ever seen. And to like just discredit the fact that could be the same, right? As, you know, I listen to the people of Worcester. All Two does, you know, all it does is sow chaos and division. I mean, it's like it's fash, dude. It like the logic here is legit fash. I'm saying it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I have no disagreement. I arrive at the same assessment.
That's the really, really offensive part of this. But I suppose before I get too ripped up, get too mad, I got to move on. That's what I've been fighting all week, is just like, don't get too mad. Don't get too mad. Because everything is just so maddening. And I'm so close to losing it. Candy goes on to say, I am not surprised by their actions, given their consistent support for my opponent in the last election and their apparent determination to prioritize political agendas each week over the pressing work we are elected to do. Are you listening to yourself? You are elected as a politician. Politicians have political agendas. What work are you doing that is not part of a political agenda? You can't just deny that you have a political agenda. You're a politician. That's what you're there for. You are there to execute on your political agenda. Jesus Christ.
It's a basic contradiction of terms, like a very, very basic one. But let's give Candy a little bit of credit here. In one paragraph, she used Two's correct pronouns 3 times.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So
progress,
right?
I'd love to see the revisions on the Google Doc. Yeah, it's just State Senator Michael Moore reading it and being like, come on, Candy.
Candy.
Candy, don't do it again. Worcester residents deserve leadership that rises above small-minded politics and remains focused on progress and unity. In this, Candy, we are in lockstep agreement. It just comes down to who's engaging in the small-minded politics.
Yeah, who's the problem?
Who's the problem? And it's very obvious in the situation that you are the problem. And actually, it became even more obvious when the next day, Atel Hajii releases a statement about how Candy's been running around calling her a liar, lying about the way that she came to America, which is just as credible and sourced an allegation as the allegation. And it's not quite as bad, but it is still pretty fucking bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue it's pretty fucking close. And I'm a biased party here, as people may know. Let me just be open about it. Atel is not just a city councilor. Atel is a longtime friend of mine from before she ever had a career in politics and back to when she was a community organizer like I am, which she still is, by the way. To say it very briefly, to hear Atel's story of her journey. Atel was born in Albania, where there was a massive civil unrest, where thousands of Albanians were killed in the civil unrest. And Atel and her family fled that unrest, and they wound up in Greece, where they lived for 2 years as undocumented immigrants before they were able to legally emigrate to the United States when she was a teenager. She was a child when this all began to unfold. That is Atel's refugee story. And yeah, I have, needless to say, I have no reason to doubt it or discount it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, what sane person would? It's not a fun story. Like, but Candy, because I mean, people who have been around City Hall, like, know like the personalities of these people, like, all of this tracks. Candy Mero-Carlson is absolutely the kind of person who would run around talking about how Atel's a fucking fake refugee or whatever. Like, that is who Candy is. I mean, it's no mistake of history or accident or coincidence that one of her closest supporters and friends in the political world, John Piccolo, like, pulled off the wildest crime that's happened in City Hall in a long time. I mean, like, she's
unless someone got beaten with a stick in like 1830, I think it is probably the wildest crime that has occurred there.
The spray paint, the spray painting the face bandit is like a longtime supporter and friend of Candy Mero-Carlson. And you know, that's like, sort of, there's been no statements of condemnation about that, of course. That's permissible because it's her camp, it's her people. And she's going to ride for her people. And when she's saying all of this stuff in the statement that reads like so batshit insane, she's saying it to her people who are probably right now loving it. They're eating it up. They're saying, say more, right? They're saying,
get me more amped up. Get me ready to grab my can of spray paint, which is another really insidious, dangerous thing about the discourse that has happened over the last week and really over the last few months.
Right. There's one group of people here that is just trying to push the city in a more progressive direction, to just come out of the 80s, just come up to the modern times and be a little normal. And then there is another camp that is reacting to that in increasingly psychotic and scary ways. And
as if it is an existential threat to them, which I think maybe they've correctly identified. Eventually it is.
Right. If not this election, it's going to happen. Like, you are going to lose. George Russell, just on the same day as Tu's statement and Candy's statement, George Russell announces his resignation. That was yesterday. Not resignation. He's not going to run for re-election. So this thin coalition of cranks on the city council that has preserved like sort of the 6-5 line that everything moves in their direction, just more in a more time consuming and quote unquote divisive way than they're accustomed to. They still get everything they want because they have this 6-vote line on an 11 member.
They just have to get yelled at a little bit, which is literally their job.
Right. Yeah. And that's divisiveness, because they know that all the yelling doesn't mean shit because they still have the 6 votes. Now, with Russell stepping out, you're looking at five votes, right? Like you're looking at the possible end of your 6-vote sort of holding majority on the direction of the city. So in terms of existential threats, I mean, that is what's happening right now. It is actually an existential threat. And Candy, you only won your election by 150 votes last time. And the same challenger is running against you again with the name recognition of having been the challenger last time. And you are not acting like somebody who's in a precarious position.
She kind of is acting like a person who's in a precarious position, but in like the least constructive ways.
Right. Like a feral version of somebody who's vulnerable.
Exactly. Like a rat that's been cornered. I said this to you before, Bill, but Candy has a ceiling, and I think we've probably seen it. Rob also everyone has a ceiling when they run for office. I think Rob's ceiling's a little higher than the votes he got in his first run. District 2 is not, thankfully, getting more cranks. It has the same number of cranks, and they always vote until they die. District 2 is getting more young professionals. It's getting more people that move into downtown, who come in from an urban area, who would probably generally describe themselves as progressives, who don't want their city council doing patronage on street paving. They wanted to do something a little more progressive, frankly.
Yeah, like support a ceasefire resolution.
Yeah, support the end of a genocide.
Yeah, like be in line with our actually pretty decent congressman, right?
Yep.
like be just as progressive as him, which is still one of the most stunning facets of Worcester City politics, is that we can have a guy like Jim McGovern who is like he's not as progressive as I would like to see, but like in the overall sort of spectrum of who's in Congress, he's one of the best ones we got at the current moment.
I know we're talking a lot here, and I don't want to digress for too long, but I think this is pertinent to like who ultimately on council succeeds and fails, and really in politics in general. A thing that I think normal people that aren't political weirdos don't necessarily understand is that how much constituent services factors into the popularity of a politician. And Jim McGovern, for years and probably decades, has had some of the most amazing constituent services of any congressperson that I've ever known or encountered. If you need something fixed and it's a federal issue, you reach out to his constituent services people, it'll get fixed. If you want to go to the Capitol and take a tour, a special tour that you get with your constituent services person where you get to see more cool stuff, they will set that up for you. Constituent services really matters. And city councilors have died by not providing good constituent services. And I think Candy is on that trajectory. Contrast that with people like Thu and Attell, and you can see why maybe some people are ascendant and some people are descendant, regardless of their attendance at pointless city council meetings.
Yeah, right. The thing that Candy either can't or won't see is that the entire time that Thu has been in office, it's been as part of a larger movement. It has been part of a movement project in which Thu is not operating in a vacuum at all. And there are actually a lot of fucking people that are watching the way that you are treating this person, right? With disgust, who resent you and want to see you gone, who have a vision of what the future of Worcester looks like that you just simply aren't in. And I think that hopefully we will see the boneheaded sort of belief that Kenny Mero-Carlson is articulating here that, you know, she's in the club and you're not, fuck you. That has worked for a long time if you're in the member of a certain club, right? Like the economic development community, the economic development coordinating council sort of inner circle around City Hall that has decided city managers going back 2 or 3 decades at least. That's worked. But it's not working as well as it has in the past. It's working less well every time. And on the other side, people like Thu and Attell have been engaged in real like municipal movement work, where they're bringing new people in and they're trying to get new people involved in city politics. And they have a vision for how our city could be better, because it's not hard to be better than we are right now. You just look at like what any other city in 2024 is doing. Just copy it.
Yeah.
And you're already improving things. You know?
It's not difficult if you're not very intentionally set against doing it on a principle basis. I'll say this. This is a challenge. I think we're probably preaching to the choir on this podcast, but this is a challenge to everyone listening. Let's get a good candidate ready and set up and funded and door knocked in D3. Let's get out there for Rob and fund him and help him. A thing that is a true criticism, overgeneralizing about these younger progressive voters who aren't political freaks and are normal people making rational decisions, is that a lot of times they just vote in presidential elections and they don't show up for these municipal elections. And if we do that, I promise you, we will flip the city council. That's all we have to do. A few hundred of us.
A few hundred new voters. It would be interesting maybe in a future episode to really break down the math on this, because I don't think people understand how close it is, how close it was last time.
People should also really go back and read the stuff that you wrote before the election and after the election, because you analyzed this pretty well, I think.
Thank you. I think that the the overall mood in the country right now has people on the left feeling rather directionless. And the best answer that I've seen any thinker come up with is a retreat into the politics of your community and the politics of your workplace. That we really need to shore up, even if you somehow perceive it as the means towards the end of like the president you want, like Bernie 2.0 someday. Even if you really don't care about the municipality, it is the way that we start the long road ahead of building up a real resistance to the rightward drift of this country. That is it is so much more worth of our time to make that pitch to as many people as possible. And it is not worth our time at all to argue with the cranks and like try to convince them to come around on something. They're never going to come around. They're going to
die like this.
They're going to react like Candy reacted this time every single time. And how Joe reacted, and we didn't even get to Joe yet, but I don't even feel like I want to even read it at this point. I think Candy's...
I think we can probably just touch on the fact that Joe's was basically the same, but to your point, Bill, and I think it's a really good one. Municipal, I tell people all the time, like, if you want to be an activist, a political activist or a non-political activist, and I am more a non-political activist in terms of like electoral politics, like using legislative bodies to get what I want. I think there's a limit to the usefulness of that. But I always tell people the more local you can focus, the more you can get done with the power that you have, and the better it will feel. You'll still lose, probably more than you win, but you'll win, and you'll win things that matter to you every day. Also, Bernie Sanders is a fucking 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And where is the backbench of Bernie Sanders is? Like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is subsumed by the system. Ilhan Omar is good. Very good, I would say. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few people, but like, we're not building a farm team. If you believe in electoral politics and you're a progressive or maybe roughly like a leftist, we're not building a farm team of that kind of politicians, and we need to. And the way where you start doing that is in city councils and state rep districts and things like that.
Exactly. And two, perhaps more than anybody who's come around recently in the local political arena has real star power. And the past 3 years have been marked by like a pretty concerted effort to squash, diminish, and rob them of that by our local political class. So I think that is maybe why both of us woke up in such a bad fucking mood today.
Yeah. And Attell too, and Christian too. Frankly.
Of course.
To varying degrees, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
yep.
Of course.
It's hard to watch.
It is very hard to watch. It's embarrassing and it's insulting. And Mayor Joe Petty after getting his ass kicked by a more progressive candidate for state rep last time in Robin Kennedy. State Senate, Robin Kennedy, has apparently decided that his political future lies in capitulating to the crank contingent, sort of wholeheartedly, and that might be a good idea for like the next mayoral race, but in the long term, it's a pretty bad idea. But I think that, we've seen a couple of different iterations of Joe Petty over the years. We've seen him try to tack towards like a progressive position.
Yep.
And he is since getting his ass kicked by Robin Kennedy, he has pretty much abandoned that.
Yeah. And I mean, Joe has, he has a political future or he doesn't. We don't know how long it will be, but Joe also has a legacy. And this is much like Joe Biden, except he was always kind of a crank. This is going to be Joe's legacy, that he lost control of council and that he turned into a conservative crank.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good way to get into. I'm looking at Joe's statement now, and I don't think we should read the whole thing, but there are some finer points that are really worth touching on quickly. He apologizes, or sort of mealy mouth apologizes for misgendering too at one point. We've been over this, that's not really the damning allegation that Tu is making. In the second paragraph, though, he goes on the attack similar to the way that Candy did. He says, I must address the importance of our obligations as elected officials. The citizens of this city elected this body to do the city's business. That means showing up to city council meetings, subcommittee meetings, and meetings with the administration to help explain the rationale and understanding behind policy votes. Joe, you've never done that. Like, once.
It's not what the city council does.
Yeah, and you couldn't if you were like asked, you couldn't. Like,
it's what the city council should do, but it's not what the city council does.
Right. Councillor Nguyen has missed half of the traffic and parking subcommittee meetings.
Oh my God.
Put a footnote right there. Those meetings, Councillor Nguyen was assigned to that subcommittee as punishment for being progressive. Traffic and parking is a subcommittee controlled by Donna Colorio, and it is entirely just stop sign and handicap parking space reviews that Donna intentionally drags on because she enjoys the feeling of wielding power over people.
It is a subcommittee whose job should be entirely done by the Department of Public Works.
Yes, it is. It is a credit to Tu's character that they wouldn't show up for those meetings, that they would value their time more than that. And then the second accusation Joe makes is the one that I really wanted to touch on because it's fascinating. Has not held a meeting for the Public Service and Transportation Subcommittee that they chair. Again, that is a subcommittee assignment for like, what is that subcommittee? It's not like a practical or functioning subcommittee. Like it's the assignment that you give somebody that you don't like, because you have to assign them somewhere, right? But then he goes on to say that failing to participate in these essential responsibilities is unacceptable. Neither of those responsibilities are essential at all. And to try to portray it otherwise is to be like sort of willfully ignorant and malicious at the same time.
I did a little bit of research on this because I was so pissed off all day that I needed something to do. And the first thing I really wanted to underscore is that not all standing committees are equal, and they're generally reactionary, which is to say that they take up business that the council has sent to them. So if they're like kind of pointless committees, the council doesn't send much to them and they don't have a lot to do. So you can't really compare committees apples and apples. It's just like a silly way to think about it. That said, I did pull some numbers for this committee and some other committees. Let me just run through this committees really quick.
Yeah.
This committee in 2024 held 0 meetings. In 2023, it held 3 meetings. I believe that was partly when Tu was on it. In 2022, it held 1 meeting. And that was before Tu was on it. That was before Tu was elected to council. Let's look at a couple of other ones real quick. Municipal Ops, which is a major standing committee, is chaired by Mo Bergman now, held 6 meetings in 2024, 10 meetings in 2023, and 2022 they held 14 meetings. That was before Mo chaired it, I believe. So I don't know why Mo's been slowing down. I'd love the mayor to address that with him. We've talked a lot about
I just wanted to say that going from 1 subcommittee meeting to 0 subcommittee meetings is essentially the same thing.
Yeah,
going from 20 plus to low teens for an actually important subcommittee meeting that was chaired by Christian King, and Christian King actively used the levers of power that chair afforded him. That's why Joe Petty took the committee away from him and gave it to Mo Bergman. So, I mean, if we're pointing to problems with the subcommittee, the way that subcommittees work in Worcester, it's certainly not two that is causing problems here. It is Joe Petty, and he knows this, and he is such a little fucking snake in the grass because he knows that none of his cranks are going to think about that for 2 seconds, you know?
Yep. That's why I wanted to bring it up quickly. This is beside the point. This is really like choosing to focus in on a stupid argument that isn't the point. But people don't know this shit. So I just wanted to like talk about it quickly. 2 more quick hits. We've talked about public safety before, which is chaired by Toomey. It has met about the same amount of times, 4 in 2022, 5 in 2023, 7 in 2024. But again, the devil's in the details. What has that committee done? Has it taken up a single item of police accountability? In fact, we know it hasn't. We have the receipts. Urban Technologies and Environment, which is chaired by King, had 6 meetings in 2022, 3 in 2023, 2 in 2024. Finally, Education, which is chaired by Attell, 2 in 2022, 1 in 2023, 2 in 2024. I think of any accusations that anyone might want to make against Attell, they will not make the accusation that she does not bust her ass as a city councilor. And her standing committee met 3 times in the past 2 years, probably because it had nothing to do.
Yeah. That one's
because it's a bullshit assignment. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a school committee for that.
Right. Yeah. That's, the Joe Petty handed the progressives bullshit committee assignments, and he's now trying to use that in a very obvious, in a very manipulative way to try to prove that 2 doesn't do anything.
That's right.
2 does a ton of stuff. 2 just doesn't feel comfortable going and sitting in City Hall. And, after reading Candy's statement, that is completely understandable.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Bill, but I also, I feel like when something's worth my time, I work really hard on it. And when something's a complete waste of my time, I don't.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's because we have things that we work hard on and we don't work hard on. We work. Joe Petty and Candy Mero-Carlson are 2 kind of people for which the definition of work is highly debatable. Whenever they are the kind of people who say that, the council needs to roll up its sleeves and get to business. As soon as you hear somebody use the term roll up our sleeves and get to work, you hear that term, you are talking to a guy who has never rolled up their sleeves and doesn't really understand what work is. That is a dead giveaway that it's just sort of like this little kink, this little twitch in the vernacular.
Working tirelessly is very similar.
Yeah, working tirelessly. I mean, it's in both of these statements. I'm going to look back through Joe's for the specific language. I'm just, where is it? Anyway, the whole crux of this case being made against Two is that the council has important work to do, and Two isn't allowing that work to be done because Two is too busy sowing chaos and hate and division. That argument might work with somebody who is naive about the way that city politics works and is not going to do their own research on what work is or isn't getting done or what work means.
Which is a lot of people, understandably. That's a normal, rational position to take.
Right. It is going to track really well with like your sort of boomer Democrat, like your center right to far right boomer. That's going to land like lightning. To anyone younger, they are going to recognize it as one of those things that boomers just say when they've run out of other things to say. Like it's very transparent that these are all just sort of little coded buzzwords that are going out to the cranks and the sort of entrenched towny petty bourgeois of the city, and that it's on us to sort of call bullshit on it, and hope that it like it's not even like explaining it to people. It's like explaining that it's normal to read this and be like, what the fuck is this weird bullshit? Right?
Yeah, you don't have to understand the machinations intimately of municipal politics. It can be helpful, but we'll always try to help you with that. But you don't have to understand that to understand the themes that you've seen in like abusive, dismissive, self-centering, narcissistic behavior, and the way that people argue when they don't really have a leg to stand on. And I said this in literally our last episode, but a thing that I've learned you should always watch out for is when someone wants to argue the minute details of a minute thing, because it always means that they don't want to argue the large details of the actually important thing. That's what it is. That's what we're doing here.
Right. It's that's what we saw Candy do here, because she just like, I might have said it, basically admitting to saying it and then being like, here's why.
It was a difficult week, and also I'm in elementary school and I won a perfect attendance award.
Yeah, right. Here's why I'm better though. It's like it's crazy. But since we've read a couple,
we've talked a lot too.
We've read a couple really, really bad statements. I would be remiss to not point out that a lot of people have shown up for Two, like that. We're not like the picture that we've been painting. We've been solely focused on like sort of the political apparatus of City Hall and how they've responded. And there's one statement, actually, listeners will remember our last guest, Ali Sislo of the Wu Havara. Wu Havara put out a really, really nice, good, heartening, encouraging statement in defense of Two. And they say here, we unequivocally condemn the recent and repeated transphobic behavior by members of the city council. In the spirit of the Jewish tradition of teshuvah, I know I didn't say that right, but we're going to move on, or making repair, we call for the following remediation from our local elected officials. Remediation is a word that Joe Petty will have to have explained to him, I believe. But anyway, they list a few points here. Point one of remediation: for the mayor and councilors to issue a statement condemning the misgendering and the dehumanizing usage of it by Councillor Mero-Carlson, and a formal apology for Councillor Mero-Carlson to resign. A councillor who uses hate speech has no place representing our constituents. For the city council and mayor to complete a mandatory bias and DEI training by June 2025. Intentional and repeated misgendering, especially with the non-consensual use of its pronouns, constitutes discrimination against protected identity. That's some legal language that City Hall people should know about. Let's see here. If the rest of the city council refuses to condemn these actions, then they too are complicit in the harassment, which kind of brings us to something I know that we both wanted to get to. I mean, we had a Tell and Christian in Two's Corner. We had Candy, Kate, and Joe come out against. We had George Russell opt out
in the biggest way,
in grand spectacular fashion. I actually there's a part of my my piece that I'm like, this part is just for George. George, thank you so much. You did the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're a nice enough guy, and you might have been a crank, but you were the least bad one. But this does leave a few people who have said nothing, and
it does.
And
shall we name them?
Yeah, sure. Jenny Pasillo and Louis Ojeda are two people that folks are waiting on something from them.
Yeah, their silence is deafening.
Yeah. Donna Colorio, don't bother. We know.
Yeah, same with Bergman.
Oh yeah, I forgot Bergman didn't say anything, but Bergman, yeah, we know. We know you're going to be shitty. It's fine.
You've told us who you are. Louis Ojeda and Jenny Pasillo.
Yeah.
We are still waiting to fully determine who you are. So help us out, please, ASAP.
Yeah. The last. Oh wait, no, hold on. The last paragraph, or not the last, but one of the last paragraphs of Uhavra's statement here is really good. If Councillor Mero-Carlson cannot manage to show a colleague basic respect in the course of executing her role as councillor, how can she be expected to respond appropriately to the needs of the LGBTQ plus constituents? In a time of escalating violence against queer and trans people, how can Worcester trust in the integrity of administrators who weaponize dehumanizing and transphobic language to express political disagreements? How can Worcester trust Candy Mero-Carlson? It's
great question.
It is an open question. And if Candy cares about having the trust of the community, and not just the ferocious barking dogs that are already in her corner, then that's something that she has to answer. If she makes no attempt to answer it, I think that we've arrived upon the conclusion that I already had, that Candy doesn't give a shit about Worcester.
Yeah,
Candy,
not most of us.
Candy has a camp. Candy has like a crony patronage system that she presides over, and is going to live and die on the strength of that. So it doesn't matter what she says, and there's no convincing her otherwise. But also at the same time, there should be no fooling us. We need to be clear-eyed about this. Where we cannot expect anything of these people. We just have to outnumber them. So that is going to require a lot of work in the next couple months.
Yeah. And, I guess just remember that you don't have to have the lowest expectations for your elected officials. Like, you should realistically not expect much of them, but you can demand of them whatever you want, and you should. That's really important, and you should pressure them when you want something from them. And I'll say this, and I don't think everyone will agree with it, but frankly, you should bully them when they bully other people. And I, hate to be that way, but like, George Russell is not running for re-election. And that says to me that bullying kind of works. George Russell got called a coward by a lot of people last Tuesday, and I don't think he liked it. And I think he decided that this like dumb project where he's like really confused most of the time is not worth his time anymore. And that matters. That's a, I don't know if it's a win. We'll see.
But it is like, it's the divisiveness and the chaos that these people are talking about is at the end of the day, like having to engage in a participatory democracy. And they hate that. They resent that. That's not the job they signed up for. Because for a long time, for most of their careers in these positions, that was not the job that they had. It's worth stressing, and I think I should probably write about this at some point. But the moment that we're in right now, and the way that we're thinking about city politics right now, is like 3 or 4 fucking years old. That like there were times in recent memory where people knew that to expect nothing from the city council.
Tu is a first-term counselor. Attell is a first-term counselor. Christian is now a third-term counselor.
Yeah.
Most of the people we're talking about on the crank side have been there a lot longer.
Yeah, 7. I mean, Russell is going to finish up his 7th straight term. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So like they are reacting poorly to a new vision for what leadership is being staked out in front of them. And it's best to sort of let them keep sinking themselves. Like Kenny Mero-Carlson might have like whipped up her base with this statement, but it's not a group of people that's getting any bigger. And there was a lot of people that read that had no reason to have an opinion at all about Candy, and coming in from the outside, reading that, being like, who the hell is this? Right.
Yeah.
So it does damage to them every time they're made to show people who they really are.
It does. And I mean, look, if you are the kind of person who who feels it's really important to appeal to people on, sort of the goodwill that you really always want them to have, that's okay. And I'm not going to tell you to do differently. I think about somebody like Claire Schaefer Duffy, who like got kind of mad this last time around. I've never seen that, but people like that to me are kind of saints in that they're always willing to turn the other cheek. I am not that person. And, the other way that you can apply pressure is, when you're speaking to bullies, speak the only language that they understand.
Yeah. And in this context right now, the way that I'm seeing how we do that is, you are insulting the city and we're going to make you fucking pay for it. You're embarrassing, and we're going to make you suffer consequences for being embarrassing. We're coming for it.
When you're a coward, we're going to call you a coward. And when you're a genocide apologist, we're going to call you a genocide apologist. And when you're a bigot, we're going to call you a bigot. Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to get out of it by making these thin overtures to a collaborative spirit that you've never once participated in. That doesn't work.
It's over.
We see right through that you're lying. You're just lying. And we're not trying to find any middle ground at all.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to find a single ounce of middle ground with Joe Petty or Kenny Mero-Carlson. They've shown themselves to be unfit for leadership, and we need to make them pay.
Yeah, they've shown us who they are, and we should believe them.
Exactly. We should believe them. Chris, I think that's a great note to end it on.
Actually, can I ask you one small indulgence? I know we had some
Yes.
other things we wanted to talk about. We went over, I had a couple things I wanted to talk about with St. V, but one of them will take far too long. But let me just say, in the shortest amount of time possible, I really can't let this week go by without getting in a quick comment about St. V's all clinical hiring event and the amazing AI image that they used, because apparently they can't get 4 nurses or doctors to that work there to pose for a stock photo. So we're going to include this in the show notes because you really have to see it to believe it.
You really, it is like, this is a publicly traded company. Like this is a big company, and to make a goof 'em up of this level, when like they would have never, like, to hire a photographer to take a picture of real people smiling is not expensive.
It's a couple $100. I have friends that do it. Yeah.
Yes. The doctor's hand.
Yeah, we're calling him Dr. Fingers. When you see this image, there are 4 people. Think of 3. We're going to talk about 3 of them. The first is Dr. Fingers. Bill, tell me about Dr. Fingers.
Well, I'm looking at Dr. Fingers, and he looks fresh out of med school. He's a dapper guy. He's handsome. He's a little swole. I'm going down. I'm looking at his hand, and I'm saying, wait a second. What is wrong with that hand? Oh, there's at least 6 fingers on that guy right there.
At least.
There's at least.
We're not even seeing his thumb, and there's 6 fingers.
Right. It looks like a hand on top of another hand with, or some weird sort of like body horror thing out of like The Substance, where there's
real
a thing.
Cronenberg hours.
It is very Cronenberg. That's the only thing that I personally noticed about this. I'm very excited to hear if there's other ones.
Yeah, I'll run you through 2 more so quick. The woman to his right, the woman next to Dr. Fingers, seems to have given Dr. Fingers all of her fingers because she has no fingers and actually no hands. Her arms just kind of blend into each other. Now let's take a quick look at the woman of color over Dr. Fingers' left shoulder, whose hair looks like Chia Pet from Hell. It really can't, you have to see it to understand, but something went very, very wrong with her hair. And like 10,000 gallons of water got consumed to make this image. So anyway, unless you have any other thoughts, Bill, that's all I had to say. That felt like a fun note to leave on.
No, this has been a wild ride. I'm really happy to break down the ballad of Candy and Dr. Fingers. It's great.
Such a great normal city that we live in.
So two housekeeping things. This just by nature of this being a tough week for writing, my post is going to cover a lot of this similar ground to this. And since this podcast is so new, I'm going to put the podcast out first and then the post, which is usually not the way that I've been doing it. So it's going to be kind of fun, kind of interesting. Second one, sort of germane to one of our last points, is I really want to start doing more election-focused in-person events and have a cool idea for a series of those. So make sure you're following the newsletter and staying tuned to that if you want to get more involved in organizing around making these embarrassing fuckers pay. Can't give a date or a schedule yet, but I will be doing that soon. So stick around for that. We can make this election season really fun if we approach it that way. if we approach it as a way to build community and have fun and try to do a little bit of righteous good in the world, then we can have a good time and do some good. It doesn't have to be so miserable all the time. So keep an eye out for that. Chris, that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And that's all I got. This was a wild ride, and I feel incrementally less terrible, and I hope you do too, Bill.
Yes, I feel a little bit like Dr. Fingers put it into real perspective for me, and my soul is significantly lighter after this. But like realistically, this was like an hour and a half long talk therapy session for both of us, because there's just so much wrong with this week. And I appreciate it. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back with another one next week.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
The crown of thorns you wear's picking the way you're thinking. You go to church on Sunday, Monday you be drinking. In liquor stores, bootlegging, in number spots, gambling. Tricky religion got you on the block scrambling. He tricked your knowledge and put you under submission. Chase them crazy bumpers out of my yard, that is my mission. So let the trumpets blow and sing the song of triumph, and slay the wicked like David did Goliath. I hear the voice of one crying in the wilderness, who climbed the outside of the mountain on the pilgrimage. I hear the voice of one crying in the wilderness, who climbed the outside of the mountain on the pilgrimage. My holy arm shall raise the flag of victory. My holy arm shall raise the flag of victory. My holy arm shall raise the flag of victory. So sing along, triumphal song and follow me. Yo, I be the first begotten to heal your wounds with lyrics. Breathe in your nostrils and cast out your wicked spirits. My prognosis to leave the crowd under hypnosis, leading your exodus out of the flesh like I was Moses. Opposes are left, drowning in the fatal flood. They didn't lace their thresholds with the lamb's blood. This is your last supper, digest it or you suffer. Feast on this unleavened bread and death shall pass you over. I'm sober, the spirit of God is dwelling in my bones. My hair is woolly, feet got the brass skin tone. My eyes are fiery, I utter the voice of many waters. Moist in your rigor mortis, dropping jewels on how they bought us. 9,000